Hemstitching is a great way to begin and end a piece of weaving on a rigid Heddle loom. It creates a nice finished edge, while also providing protection for weft layers at the ends of the fabric. Hemstitching can also help lock warp ends in place once you finish a piece, providing an easy way to create basic fringes without knots or twists. You'll start by weaving an inch or two of your project. When you start your first layer, be sure to leave loose a long tail of weft yarn, about 4 to 5 times the width of your project. You can see this in the bottom right of this video, at the place where I started weaving my fabric. Thread your yarn tail from the start of your project onto a tapestry needle. The first stitch can be a little tricky, especially if you have messy edges, like I sometimes do. Start by pulling your thread through the fabric, starting at the back. In this project, I'm working with a 2x2 hemstitch, so I'm pulling my yarn through the hole located 2 warp threads over and 2 weft threads up. Pull the thread all the way through the fabric. Once you've pulled your thread through, loop your yarn as seen in the video. The closed end of the loop is going in the opposite direction of our starting point. The next step is to bring your threaded needle back to the start of the stitch, loop it behind your warp threads, and pull your needle through to the front of the fabric, making sure your needle passes through your looped yarn. Pull your thread tight to seal the first stitch. Continue this 2x2 pattern all along the edge of your fabric. Find the whole 2 warp threads and 2 weft threads over and pull your thread from back to front through that spot. Create a loop with your loose thread, with the closed portion of the loop pointed away from your starting point. Bring your needle back to the start of the stitch and pull your thread behind and across the 2 warp threads in this grouping. Pull your needle from the back to the front of the fabric, going through your looped yarn, and pull tight to seal the stitch. Remember to pull your thread behind the fabric at the beginning of a new stitch. Go over 2 warp threads and up 2 weft threads and pull your yarn up through the fabric at that point. Create a loop with your yarn. Then, bring your needle back to the start of the stitch and pull it behind and across your 2 warp threads. Pull your thread up and through your loop and pull tight. You'll notice the finished hemstitching tends to pull the fabric up a bit, away from any waste yarn you may be using at the beginning of your warp. You aren't limited to a 2x2 pattern with hemstitching. You can choose to do a 3x3 pattern or a 4x2 pattern or any other pattern you want. A great way to experiment with different hemstitching patterns is to create short samples on your loom. The final hemstitch has a minor difference. Start the stitch as usual, bringing your needle and yarn behind the fabric. But instead of bringing your yarn up through the fabric at a 2x2 point, you'll simply be bringing your yarn up and around the edge of the fabric from the back and returning to the starting point of the stitch. Then, pull your thread behind and across the last 2 warp threads and through your loop. Pull tight to finish. You can weave in the loose thread to finish.
So we're going to do a 2x2. It's going to look a little messy on the end. I tied a knot here to anchor it so it looks a little messy. But what you're going to do is you're going to go over 2 warp threads and up 1, 2 weft threads. You're going to pull your thread through. And you're going to leave a little bit, like a little knot right here. You're going to come back through those same 2 warp threads. And so it goes through here. Alright, and you're going to pull. That's going to get a little easier to see as we go through here. 2 warp threads, 2 weft, pull through, come back through the same 2 warp threads and kind of up through this little loop we've created here. Tie a knot. Be a little careful. Okay. Back through 2 warps, up 2 wefts, pull through, keep that loop. It kind of looks like that. Keep that loop. Go back up through the 2 warps, pull through, tug a little. All right. 2 warp threads, 1, 2 weft threads, pull through, okay, 2 warps, and it creates a knot, and tug up. You don't have to tug too hard. All right, go over 2 warps, up 1, 2 wefts, pull all the way through, and then just leave it laying there kind of like a loop. Go back through your 2 warp threads and pull through. And pull, tug. All right. Over 2, up 2, pull through. Now this is the correct way to leave it. So when you go through, if you were to do this and come through, you won't catch the knot. So we're going to go back through. All right. And if it helps to visualize it, you can lay the loop like this so you can actually see the loop. So through the 2 warps,